This is the absolute greatest unsolved mystery in the entire history of the FBI. Think about it. How does a man pull off the literally impossible and then just vanish into thin air? Well, despite the full, crushing force of modern forensics and, decades of relentless searching, the facts of this case are just absolutely baffling. It's a story that completely defies logic, breaks every single rule of aviation, and leaves top investigators scratching their heads over half a century later.
So, let's set the scene. It's November 24th, 1971. An incredibly average-looking guy in a dark suit and a black tie, traveling under the alias Dan Cooper, boards Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 in Portland, Oregon. He sits down quietly in seat 18C, right in the very back of the Boeing 727. He orders a bourbon and soda, lights up a cigarette, and just waits. He honestly seemed like just a totally normal guy on a completely routine 30-minute flight up to Seattle. The passengers around him, they're reading newspapers, getting geared up for the Thanksgiving holiday, completely oblivious to the fact that the quiet man in the back row is about to change aviation history forever.
But the tension was about to spike, fast. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper hands this perfectly folded note to a young flight attendant. Now, at first she actually thought he was just hitting on her, so she slips it unread right into her pocket. But Cooper leans in close and whispers, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." He calmly invites her to sit down right beside him, and when she asks to see it, he opens his totally ordinary-looking briefcase just enough for her to peek inside. What she saw would instantly trigger one of the most massive manhunts in American history. Tucked neatly inside was this tangled mess of red cylinders, heavy wire, and a huge cylindrical battery. A live bomb, literally ready to detonate midair.
His demands were shocking. Just shockingly simple, but terrifyingly real. He wasn't out to make some grand political statement, and he definitely wasn't interested in a drawn-out, movie-style negotiation. He wanted exactly $200,000 in cash. To put that into perspective, by today's standards, we're talking well over $1 million. And he specifically stated it had to be entirely in unmarked $20 bills, which would weigh roughly 21 pounds. So easy enough to carry, but basically impossible to track. The message relayed to the pilots was short, direct, and completely non-negotiable. Get the money, or this plane goes down.
But wait, he didn't just want the cash. He also demanded 4 parachutes, 2 primary back parachutes, and 2 reserve chest packs. Now this right here, this specific, highly calculated detail is what makes his whole plan so incredibly brilliant. By demanding 4 parachutes instead of just 1, he completely outsmarted the FBI. The authorities immediately assumed, he might force hostages to jump with him. And because of that terrifying possibility, the FBI couldn't risk slipping him dummy rigs or sabotaged equipment. They had to scramble to a local skydiving school and hand over real, fully functioning, inspected gear. One wrong move, one delayed demand, and everyone on that flight was in immediate, fatal peril.
The tension really escalated into this absolute masterpiece of strategy. The plane circled over the Pacific Northwest for nearly 2 whole hours, while the FBI frantically gathered up the ransom. Finally, after touching down in Seattle, Cooper actually kept his word. As the plane sat there on the tarmac getting refueled, he exchanged all 36 terrified passengers for the heavy knapsack of cash and the parachutes. But guys, the nightmare wasn't over. With the civilians off, he locked down the next phase of his plan. He ordered the remaining flight crew to keep the plane low, we're talking under 10,000 feet, and take off once again straight into the stormy night. Their new forced destination, Reno, Nevada.
Now, I want you to really put yourself in the shoes of that flight crew for a second. Mid-flight, high above the pitch-dark, rugged, storm-battered terrain of the Pacific Northwest, Cooper gives them one final, absolutely chilling order. Go into the cockpit and lock the door. So the pilot, the co-pilot, and the flight engineer are forced into the incredibly tight confines of the flight deck. They are entirely at his mercy, isolated at the absolute front of the plane. They are flying a massive commercial jet, carrying a live bomb, with a hijacker just stalking the empty, dark cabin right behind them. And then it happened. The massive twist that literally nobody saw coming. After hours of agonizing, absolute white-knuckle flying, the plane finally touches down safely in Reno. The aircraft is immediately swarmed by law enforcement. The trembling crew slowly, cautiously opens up that cockpit door to face their hijacker. But what they found will shock you. Cooper, the bomb, those heavy bags of cash, they were completely gone. Nowhere to be found. The cabin was impossibly empty. There was nothing but an eerie silence over the hum of the jet engines. The only physical clue left behind was right at the very back of the plane.
You see, the Boeing 727 had this really unique feature, an aft stairway that could actually drop down from the tail. Well, that heavy door was left fully extended, just hanging open into the freezing, violent wind, meaning somewhere between Seattle and Reno, thousands of feet in the air, screaming through the sky at 200 miles per hour, in the middle of a literal torrential rainstorm, Dan Cooper strapped that money to his body, lowered those stairs, and jumped straight into the pitch black of night.
Never to be seen again. This single moment didn't just change aviation security forever, like literally forcing planes to install mechanisms so you can't open those stairs mid-flight anymore. It created an absolute ghost. He completely vanished into the rough, freezing wilderness of the Cascade Mountains, just swallowed whole by the dense pine forests. And for almost a decade, absolutely nothing was found. Until, in 1980, a young boy digging on the banks of the Columbia River unexpectedly unearthed 3 decaying bundles of $20 bills. The serial numbers matched the ransom exactly. But that was it. Just rotting cash and literally no definitive sign of the man himself.
The aftermath of that crazy jump spawned an obsessive, decades-long manhunt. The FBI launched this massive investigation known as NORJAC, looking at well over 800 suspects through the years. I mean, we're talking ex-military paratroopers, reckless thrill-seekers, seasoned criminal masterminds. Heck, some suspects even confessed on their deathbeds. But the shocking truth? Every single lead went completely cold. None of them could be definitively proven to be Cooper. He had basically executed the perfect crime, stepping off a plane and right out of existence.
Which leaves us with one final, haunting question for this explainer. Who on earth was Dan Cooper? Did he somehow survive that freezing fall, walking away as a criminal mastermind who pulled off the ultimate escape? Or did he just massively miscalculate the jump, taking his dark secrets and the rest of the money to an undiscovered grave deep in those unforgiving woods? Make sure to follow for more hidden history stories, and definitely comment down below with what mystery I should cover next.